صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious, the most merciful. Peace and blessings be upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I hope everyone is doing well with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving life, giving all of us life to see another Jummah. Alhamdulillah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives barakah in our life in this month of Sha'ban, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us reach Ramadan, inshallah. So today's discussion is about, you guys may have seen the WhatsApp message. So the discussion is about the Tarbiyah of the children, the importance of the proper upbringing of our children. So my mission today is that so I could encourage all of us to do proper upbringing of our children. So I want to mention several things that could encourage us so we could look into how we're raising our children, and maybe if we're doing something wrong in that, we fix that. And some of us maybe don't have children, so then we start planning ahead of time. How are we going to raise children when we have them? So, and then I'll mention what will happen if we don't. If we don't raise our children properly, what's going to happen as well. We'll mention that as well. And we won't go into too much detail about how to raise your children. There are several books written upon that. But today's topic is to encourage you to raise your children properly, and what's going to happen if you don't. And then inshallah in the next month, or maybe the Jummah after Ramadan, that one Jummah maybe I can dedicate into just how to raise your children. But that will be a very fast, like a 101 super fast. I have to basically summarize a whole book, several books into 20 minutes, right? So just into bullet points after bullet points. Now that's how it will be. Or we could divide it into two Jummahs, and we could do part 1 and part 2. Sure. But today's will be why we should care about that, why we should care about raising our children properly. So firstly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that the best of the times were the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was the best time, right? That was the best generation. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ, then after that, the next best was the one after him, and then after him, and then after him, right? So if you look at us, how far we are from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? How many generations? How many hundreds? Right? At least 1400, right? And every 100 year has several generations. Every 100 years has 4 generations at least, right? So if you multiply by 14, what's the calculation? So over 50 generations, right? We are over 50 generation away from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that the best generation is his, and then the one after that. So if you do the step count, we're like 50 steps below, right, the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what does it mean to be the best generation? What does it mean to be the worst generation? It means that if you look at the best person in today's generation, that best person, and then if you look at the worst person in today's generation, right, that delta is a lot compared to the best person and the worst person at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the time of the Sahaba, the Tabi'un. Their worst person were also not so worst off. And today's worst people are so bad. Today's worst people, Shaitan has made human beings discover so many new avenues of sin, right? And back then, the worst was something that already exists now too. That hasn't gone. But Shaitan has made us discover more and more avenues of bad things. Understand? Back then, the worst was zina, maybe, right? In terms of immodesty. Now, it's much worse than that. Now you have sodomy, you have people changing their own genders, right? These things were unheard of back then, right? And then now you look at the best of the people back then, the ulama back then, in Ramadan, they would recite the entire Quran 60 times. That was back then. Now, I don't think we could find anyone who could recite even 30 times. Maybe some of the elite might. And very few of them are left, right? Back then, the best of the people, there were a lot of them. A lot. Every city, every county, every town every child was a hafiz to begin with, right? And every household had an alim, had a scholar, right? Now, some towns, they don't have any hufaz, any ulama. They have to import them. They have to get them from other countries, other towns, right? Because they're not producing them. So not only you have the quality of people are less, even the cream of the crop, the elite, is nothing compared to their elite of the past generation. And also those elites are very few elites left, right? And back then, the worst in the city, they were also very few. The worst people, the evil, the worst of the community were very few. Just like you could count them. There's 5 bad people in this community, that's it. Now the worst are also the most. There's a lot of them. Understand? So elite are very few, and evil are a lot, and then the evil itself is very bad. So you can see how bad we've gone, right? Over time, how bad we've become. Understand? So therefore, raising a child back then, you didn't have to do too much. By default, the child would raise fine, just fine, right? But now, if you don't nurture the child properly, they'll go bad, very bad, right? Back then, the bad was maybe a child would just sometimes watch movies. That's it. Now the bad is, the bar has gone so low. If you don't nurture them properly, they're gone. Back then, very few people were atheists. Most of the mankind were theist, some form of theist, right? Christian, Jews, or Muslim, right? Now, there's a lot of people are becoming atheist. And majority of the atheists are Christians, former Christians, right? And their children, and current parents who are Christians, they don't care about their religion. They don't care about raising their children properly. And those children, they are bound to become atheists, right? So in the next coming years, next coming decades, we'll see that the majority of the population will be atheists. Alayadu billah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from that. So therefore, we could tell that now more than ever, there's a huge, massive need that we need to properly take care of our children. We cannot just leave them at the mercy of the environment, because the environment is much worse than before, right? Before you leave the children at the mercy of the environment, they'll still be fine. They'll meet uncles on the street, they'll tell them good things, right? Anyone in the society, they see them, any uncle will see them doing something bad in the society, they'll tell them, hey, don't do that, right? Even if the father is not saying anything, the community, the society will make sure the child is not doing bad. That zamana has gone. Today, it's all about individualism, right? The child can do anything he likes. The society is going to think, oh, that's normal. That's okay. He's just following his desire, right? Nowadays, if a child is 8-year-old, 7-year-old, the child thinks that, oh, I am a girl. Well, that's normal. He's expressing his deep desires of being whatever he wants to be, right? So that's the society we live in. So now, does it behoove us that we leave our children to the society, to the environment? It doesn't, right? If we leave them, then what's going to happen? They'll become the worst. And I was reading a study that a lot of Muslims, they migrated to North America and South America back in the early 1900s, right? Especially South America. Not so much in North America, but a lot of Muslims went to South America. And now their generations, their progenies are no longer Muslim. Just in a span of 3 to 4 generations, they left Islam. They left Islam. So now, the only way they found out is that they did the survey and they asked for their great-grandfather names, and the names were Muslim. That's it. And you can only imagine what kind of Muslims they were, that their children, they kept losing faith, and few generations later, they were all gone, right? So it was obviously their neglect, right? It must have been their neglect. That's why all of them gone, right? 1 or 2, I can understand that, it's obviously guidance is not in the hand of mankind, right? 1 and 2, I can understand, but all of them, then it must have been a neglect of the parents. Similarly, even in the North America, a lot of the slaves that were brought from Africa, they were Muslims. But now we don't see much. Like, all the Muslims are just the ones that are recently arriving, that are now arriving, right? And if we follow the same trend, 3, 4 generations from now, alayadu billah, I don't know about our children. Understand? So, just a general principle is that if you can raise your children to be better than you, then it's hope that they'll raise their children better than them, and then better. It's just going to go upwards, right? Otherwise, if your children are like you or less, then it's just going to be less, and gone. Understand? So our concern should be that the children that we're raising, are they becoming better than us or not? Are we raising them better than us or not? Right? Not even equal to us. That's not going to do it. It has to be better than us. If you increase that trend, only then you can hope that 3 generations later, 4, 5, 6 generations later, they'll still be Muslims. Only if you do that upward trend. If it's downward trend, gone. The only way you'll be recognized 4 generations later, if it's a downward trend, is by just name. Oh, that one person back in the day was a Muslim. He came from Pakistan. He came from India. And from the name, it seems like he was a Muslim. That's it. Will be remembered like that. Alayadu billah. So now, I just want to mention some other benefits. One is definitely this, that they'll stay upon Iman, right? By making sure that we put our effort. Another benefit, actually before the benefit, nowadays we put a lot of effort in making sure that our children, they get the right knowledge, they get the schooling done, right? They get their degrees, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran several places that He has taken responsibility for your sustenance, okay? Sustenance is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken responsibility for, And that is the same reason why we are putting so much effort in sending our kids to schools and colleges, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised the sustenance. On the flip side, has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised guidance? Has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised guidance to everyone? Nope. Then how much effort are we putting in that? We're putting in all the effort we like to in the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already promised. Sustenance Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already promised, but we put so much effort in making sure our children have all the skills to get the right jobs, right? But guidance is not promised, and we don't put any effort. Is that upside down? That is upside down, right? It's true that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that we need to earn a halal living, right? To earn a halal living, we need to gain the right skills. So sure, we must send our kids to gain the right skills. That's fine. But Rasulullah mentions that it's fard after the fara'id, after believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after making sure that you have the right belief, right aqeedah. If you don't have the right aqeedah, that's more important than you gaining the proper sustenance. Understand? So that's higher priority. So our priorities are a little bit upside down, right? We have made the kids to get the skills more important than fixing their aqeedah. Otherwise, who can say that their children spend more time fixing their aqeedah than they spend their time in schools? Who can claim that today? Nobody can claim that. Our children are spending 8 hours, 10 hours every day gaining the skills to earn a job, right? To earn a living. But maybe they're spending 2 hours a week fixing their aqeedah. That's it, 2 hours, maybe 4 hours. Nothing beyond that. That's the priority we've given. In fact, they might be spending more time doing their soccer practice, their basketball practice. Those things take more time. And their religious aqeedah, that the most important thing, 2 hours, Sunday school, that's it, just a Sunday school. So that's the priority we have given. Understand? And from these schools and universities, a lot of the things that they're learning and a lot of the things that they're seeing, it's taking them away from Islam. It's directly against the Islam. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions, interestingly, Rasulullah mentions that some knowledge is ignorance. So mentions barely from some form of knowledge is ignorance. So every knowledge doesn't make you enlightened. Understand? For example, if you get the knowledge of magic, is that going to make you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is that enlightening? That's ignorance. You learned that knowledge, now you will apply that knowledge. Right? Similarly, any knowledge a person can earn, and because of that knowledge, if he's going away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's ignorance. That knowledge is not knowledge, that's actually ignorance. So we need to see, if we're sending our children to these different institutions, what are they learning? Perhaps they're learning something that's taking them away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So we need to monitor. Before, back in the day, a few decades ago, you could send them to school and not worry about what they're learning over there. Today, it's more than important than ever that we need to worry about what they're learning. Understand? And if they're learning something that's against the teaching of our religion, we need to fix that. We need to teach them better. We need to teach them that this is not correct. This is not the teaching of our religion. Understand? If we don't have time to do that, can we send our children to those proper institutions, maybe to the scholars, take them to the scholars on a regular basis, right? Send them to the masjid on a regular basis. So that the least the masjid could do is that, the term is called damage control, right? So we can at least do damage control. Understand? Otherwise, sure, they'll come home with all the skills, but also they'll come home with all the filth, right? The whole package will come. So we want to make sure they learn the right skills, but we don't want to have them also have all the filth. We want to make sure what they're learning, we want to make sure who they're hanging out with, right? Who their friends are, right? Because once they're independent, they will not listen. As long as they're under you, they are under your roof, you have the jurisdiction upon them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ, that each and every one of you is a shepherd. Each and every one of you is a shepherd, and كُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ, then each and every one of you will be asked regarding your flock. So your flock is your family, your flock is your wife and children. Everyone living under your roof is your flock. So you'll be asked for them, regarding them. So that's the primary benefit, is that if we make sure that what they're learning, and we make sure that we do the right thing, we send them to the right institutions, then inshallah their aqidah, their iman will be protected, and they don't learn the wrong things. Another benefit, there's a few benefits I'll mention. Another benefit is that when we teach them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we teach them about our religion, then they'll fulfill our rights. They'll fulfill our rights, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches all of mankind to be nice to their parents, to take care of the parents when they're old. And nowadays the leading complaint of the parents is, when they get old, is that our children, they forgot about us. They kicked us out. They put us in the old age homes, right? Why is that? That's because your own fault. When the children were little, you did not connect them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because you didn't connect them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now they don't care about you. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who teaches the rights of all of mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches the right of the wife, the parents, the children, the neighbors, everyone's right. Who teaches? In the schools, they don't learn the rights of the parents. Do they learn the rights of the parents? They don't, right? Do they learn the rights of the neighbors? Nothing. The only place that teaches the rights of everyone, every mankind, is the masjid, is the hadith, or is the Quran, right? So we never connected our children to that avenue, and now we're complaining that, oh, they're not fulfilling our rights. They don't pay us. We are poor. The children are rich. They're not fulfilling our monetary needs. It's our fault. But maybe there are some cases where the parents, if they do their due diligence, and then the children, they make sure, because Rasulullah also mentions that every child grows up upon fitrah. So a child is born upon fitrah. By default, a child is Muslim, okay? But then the parents, they make the child either a Christian or a Jew or an atheist, right? Or a Muslim. So now, if we don't raise them properly, we didn't make them the proper Muslim. Understand? We didn't solidify because that's basically any person, majority of the mankind, they are basically stuck upon their initial, whatever they have been taught by their parents. Okay? So now if we don't teach them the right thing properly at the get-go, and if we leave weaknesses, then outside factors will take them away. So, but yeah, there's instances where you do the due diligence, but then when they grow up, sure, and then alayadu billah, they leave the fold of Islam, then you won't be responsible. And this happened to Nuh alayhi salam, right? His son also left. He did not believe. So in that case, he's not even considered your family. If someone leaves, he's not even considered your family. But the question is, are we even doing the due diligence, right? So if we're not, then we'll be responsible. So that was the first one. Second one is that if we take care of our children properly, they'll be with us in the hereafter. The last thing we want is that we are in Jannah and our children are in the hellfire. Do we want that? No. Alayadu billah. We want our children, we love our children so much, right? So if we raise them properly, if we give them the proper teachings of Islam, they'll stay up on Iman and they'll be with us in Jannah. Wouldn't we want that? We want to hang out with them. We want to have majalis with them in Jannah, right? So that's another perk of making sure that we raise our children properly. Running short of time, let's quickly mention the other ones. So that our children have become a sadaqah jariyah for us, right? A person can only do so much good things in our life. 60-year, 70-year lifespan, you can only do so much, right? But like in any business, if you go get a job, you can only make a certain amount of money. If you truly want to become rich, you start a business, right? A business is where you could get like exponential gains, right? You keep getting money from different avenues, right? Similarly, But if you truly want to keep getting rewarded after your death, you leave pious children. You raise pious children, and then they'll raise pious children, and then it keeps multiplying exponentially, right? Few decades later, every second you'll get thousands and thousands of rewards. It only starts off with just you raising your children properly. If you have one child, raise that one child properly. Two children, both of them properly. Understand? So that's the benefit. Otherwise, you die, and then your source of reward is done. Unless you did other things, maybe you build a masjid, right? You build a hospital, you get rewarded for that as well. Inshallah. Next one is that, last one, I'll end with that, is that so we don't get punished by our negligence, because of our negligence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that everything, even our children are a source of test for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that your wealth, your children, they are a source of test for us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us children. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us how we're going to raise our children. So if we don't do the proper due diligence, if we don't raise them properly, we don't teach them the right thing, if we don't teach them the manners, if we don't teach them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the aqidah, about the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's because of our shortcoming, we didn't teach them, they will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. You will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. Should I tell you a story? A brief one? Okay. So once a man came to Umar radiallahu anhu, mentioning that he brought his son, that Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, the son is very disobedient, right? He doesn't listen, he's just bad. So then so Umar radiallahu anhu asked the son that, the son asked Umar radiallahu anhu that, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, are there any rights of the children upon the parents? Do they have to do something to the children, or is it just the children have to do for the parents? So Umar radiallahu anhu says, yes, there are rights of the children upon the parents as well. So he says, what are they? So then Umar radiallahu anhu mentions that the father finds an appropriate, upright mother for the child. Okay, a pious mother. Yani the father and the mother they're both pious so that they can raise the children properly. Okay, and then he gives them a good name, and then he teaches him Quran. So that just summarizes in that hadith. So then the son says that my father, he married a fire worshipper, and he named me Ja'al, some name that doesn't even have a good meaning. And then he did not teach me even a single letter of Quran. So then the father says that you came here complaining about your son, but you're at fault. You're the culprit. So if you married a fire worshipper, how are you going to raise your children properly? Whoever you marry, especially nowadays, this zamana, and obviously that zamana too, that if you have different religion, if the husband and spouse, they have different religion, that mostly the wife's religion is going to take over, right? So now she was a fire worshipper, she didn't let him teach him anything. And not only that, he also didn't care about naming him properly. And the reality of the matter is that he himself obviously wasn't too educated about religion. He himself didn't care about religion, right? If he cared about religion, he would have taught his children knowledge too. He didn't even teach him a word of Quran. So on the Day of Judgment, the question is, will we be accountable for our negligence? So if today we just look at our lives, we survey our lives, how are we raising our children? Are we negligent? Do we just, if they don't want to pray, do we just let them be? Do we not wake them up in the morning because, oh, he's sleeping, let my child sleep? I don't want to disturb his sleep. Are we those kind of parents? So we need to think about it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us the understanding of how to properly upbring our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the the importance of this in our lives, inshallah. And we'll continue this discussion, inshallah. Today we mentioned why. Inshallah, in the coming Jumas, I'll mention how. We'll summarize the how to raise your children, inshallah. So may Allah give myself and all of us the tawfiq wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.